Okay, episode 15, which is the Plague Sower. Yeah, I kind of wish I had like a spooky voice I could say that in, but I don't, so you get what you get. This one is about a plague in Trinity, and there's kind of three little, one big thread, two little threads. Some A plot and two little B plots. We open with Doc Crower in the car with Ben, and they're talking about some kind of outbreak, so we know that that's kind of what's going on first of all. And we get like quite a intense little scene at the start, I guess, or maybe not intense compared to some other episodes, but basically they go into a house and it seems deserted. There's a quick like backstory that Ben tells us that the woman killed her first husband and now her second husband is sick, and it's kind of weird. But they enter, there's blood in the sink, and upstairs the doctor finds the family bleeding from like their eyes and nose and their mouth, I think, and the husband has hung himself and he has a paper on him that says repent. So then we get the credits, and in the next little bit a man is abusive to his wife. He starts hearing a ringing noise that's like super painful, and his ears start to bleed. So we learn pretty quickly that that the plague is like linked to you being a bad person or having done some kind of bad thing. And yeah, that's kind of the setup. Anyway, the main thread is about the plague itself. So a man, one of the guys that's made a deal with the sheriff, tells him he's seeing visions of blood everywhere, and he wants the sheriff to help make the vision stop, but he doesn't take the deal that the sheriff wants him to. And we later see Merlin sort of talking to this guy and trying to get him to resist the sheriff. Yeah, sometimes when Sheriff Buck makes deals with people, it reminds me of Twilight Zone kind of series storylines, or shows that are like that. Anyway, it's kind of a side note, but the sheriff tries to stop press rumors. Merlin appears to the doctor and he remembers her. The hospital is in chaos, so we kind of all set up, and then we have Dr. Billy Peel, who's come from the CDC. Dr. Matt Crower actually called him, so that's why he's there. And one of the first things he sees in the hospital is the sheriff taking away a man's plasma, and he confronts him and even threatens him with like some kind of a needle. So we can see straight away that this guy isn't afraid of the sheriff, I guess because he's from out of town, but he also just doesn't seem like somebody who is intimidated easily. So yeah, he just starts to investigate throughout the episode. And it seems pretty clear that the sheriff seems to be bringing the plague to people. So yeah, there's also a little moment where they have a chat, and Peel tells the sheriff that he's reminded of a corrupt dictator, so like that's how he sees the sheriff. And he says that one of the dictator's own men ended up killing him, so I'm wondering if that's like a little foreshadowing there. This show seems like a little foreshadowing. Selena sort of makes friends with the doctor as well, with Dr. Peel. She warns him that the sheriff's evil, and then at the very end it seems like they're kind of friends, maybe. And yeah, Merlin puts her hands in the lake and all the water turns to blood. Dr. Peel gets a blood sample from the sheriff, and the sheriff isn't happy about it. We don't see what the results are, but I'm kind of wondering if it will show anything or not, or what it might show. The sheriff's kind of out of his depth here, so eventually he just goes out to the spooky bridge that we've seen in previous episodes, and he calls Merlin and asks for her help. He tries to make a deal with her, and she makes his eyes bleed, but it doesn't last. So obviously she has quite a lot of power, but maybe she isn't quite ready to take him on again yet. But basically Merlin goes to see Caleb, And she says that the people that get sick are sinners, in her words, and that like she's been told to punish the wicked. So I'm like, okay, I don't really get what she is exactly, but that's fine. Caleb blames her for making people sick. He says love is the answer, not like revenge, which is kind of interesting because revenge makes you more like the sheriff. And then she lifts the plague because she feels bad. And then we learn that this Peel character is staying and that the sheriff is in his debt because he saved the sheriff's town, but most especially saved Gale. So that kind of brings us to the other it's quite a small little B plot, but in a previous episode, Gale's made some kind of deal with the sheriff, and the implication is that they're gonna sleep together. So that's basically what happens. She sort of resists for some of the episode, and yeah, there's a bit where Ben kind of like spoils the mood for them, but eventually she goes to his house, they hop on the good foot and do the bad thing, and right in the front garden as well, which is like, I don't know, but it's clearly some plan that the sheriff has. I think it might be that he needs something from like somebody that's in Caleb's family, like there's something to do with the bloodline of their family. And then we cut to her being in hospital and she's dying, so yeah. But like I said, she gets better at the end of the episode because Merlin like lifts the plague. And I kind of want Gale and the doctor to end up together, but I have a feeling she might be pregnant with like a Rosemary's baby. So very dramatic. The other plot is the doctor is out of action for this episode. The bleeding symptoms remind him of the Bible, and there's like a scene where a kind of Manson hippie looking guy writes "repent in blood" on the doctor's office window. And yeah, we hear that he has the plague. He starts highlighting passages in the Bible and making Caleb drink like weird teas, and then he just loses it completely, and the sheriff has to basically come and rescue Caleb because the doctor's gone nuts. But he's almost kind of nice to the doctor when he takes him out of the house, so that's kind of weird. Yeah, there's a point where Caleb starts to see blood everywhere, and Merlin is there, so obviously she doesn't like it when he talks to the sheriff. Yeah, and there's a moment where Caleb goes to see the doctor, and he's just allowed to like go and stand next to him and talk to him because he's not contagious. And I'm like, okay, but how, like, we didn't get a scene where we know that this kid's just allowed everywhere. He just walks into operating rooms and stuff. There's a little stripy shirt on. Small towns, I guess. This episode just feels so interesting to me because, you know, we live in the COVID times, and, you know, there's a scene where the sheriff brings Caleb a mask and gloves to wear, and there's a scene where the sheriff's like compared to a dictator, and he talks about how he hates journalists and he doesn't care about integrity or the truth, but like he doesn't like how they put a spin on things that isn't always the spin that he wants. And he's like basically a super spreader, and the idea that sin is linked to disease is kind of interesting. I'm not saying I agree with that, obviously that's kind of bullshit, but I just think, like, I was watching this and there were so many things that linked to day-to-day life in this weird time we live in. Obviously it's nice that people are not bleeding out their eye sockets, but yeah, it's funny watching stuff sometimes when you're, you know, it's not, when you just see these parallels to like daily life that you never would have expected to ever see, I guess, you know. So yeah, the status quo now is Merlin is out to get the sheriff, and she's doing some biblical stuff to make that happen. Caleb seems to interfere and stop her from achieving this, so I guess there's maybe a right way to do this, in his mind anyway. And I think Gail is going to be pregnant or something. She's obviously made some kind of deal with the sheriff, which is never a good thing. And the doctor is well again, but this Dr. Peel guy from the CDC looks like he's sticking around. So this was quite a lot of overarching story stuff that kind of happened within this. I guess this is kind of a monster of the week in a way, but it kind of fits into the moving the overall arc forward quite a lot, I think. So yeah,